Brian Eno allegedly got paid $35,000 to produce the Windows 95 boot up music. You know the one. It goes kind of like... Anyway, it does that for approximately 7 seconds. You can correct me in the comments about that if you want. I don't know whether it's true that he got $35,000. I don't know whether it's true that it lasts 7 seconds. But why... I am interested in why that is even a story that we care about. Yes, its cultural significance it can't be understated, but the fact that 7 seconds, $35,000 is interesting to us. That's obviously the interesting part of the story, not the fact that he possibly produced one of the most concise musical statements in modern history. We talk about the ratios, all right? And maybe it's because we have a strange fascination between these ratios, especially as creative people. Now, I use the term creative people very loosely. I think that everyone is creative to some extent, but it's been said before that creativity is a lifestyle, and I strongly agree with that. I think that, I go as far as saying that when I exercise, when I go for walks, which is exercise but a different kind, it calms me down. When I listen to music, when I eat, when I tidy my room, when I put Brill cream in my hair, this is all part of the process of creating. In fact, everything that I do, you could argue that everything that I do, sleeping, I need to sleep to produce, because as creative people, we are the most important tool. All right. Now, that you could say that I've got a big ego for thinking that, but I'm thinking about this in purely objective terms, purely as logical as I can possibly be terms. Okay. Now, one thing that people really obsess about when you are self-employed, and by the way, my qualification on talking about this is that I've been self-employed for over a decade now. I've never counted it, to be honest, and not counting things will be a common theme in this subject that I'm talking about right here. Okay, that's it. That, and whether you agree with me or not, are my qualifications here. I'm never really that bothered about justifying things like that. So, one of the things that people will ask you is, if you produce a bit of work, what's your hourly rate for that? And for example, in a painting, because it's more quantifiable if we talk about paintings, and I have worked as a 2D visual artist before. If we take 10 hours to draw something and we sell it for $100, then that's $10 an hour. Now, you might argue that that's a nice, easy equation. You might argue that, that's not a very good rate of pay. You've got to factor in things like, but, the fact that I sold that means that I could spend more time with my 5-year-old daughter. Okay? Now, how much money is a company going to have to pay you to stop spending time with your family? These things are really, really, truly very hard to quantify. And I think that this is where the problem lies. I worked I worked like a full-time job until maybe 10 years ago. Again, I can't remember. I worked in bars for 12 years. I made shoes for a little while. I've done a little construction. I was a fishmonger for 3 years. Anyway, a bloomin' good one too, by the way. I am now allergic to fish. I developed an allergy, but I digress. Obviously, in these jobs, I got paid per hour. And I think most of you that are watching this video will be in that mindset. And it's really, really hard to drop that. But when we start to work out that these things aren't comparable, almost. So what about if this painting took 10 hours to paint, but then you start to factor in the fact that you have to, work out. You have to exercise. I'm using my example here. I lift weights 3 times a week. Yep. When I'm not injured because I've overdone it. I'm in my 40s now. I don't put on muscle as well as I used to. I walk for over an hour a day. It gets me into a very good mood, and I think that the meditative nature of walking and listening to music while I walk is a very good thing. You know, I have to get myself in a good mood other ways by, you know, watching several YouTube videos on on repeat. I have to sleep. And what about when we... Okay, so let's just say that for the argument, I'm effectively working 24 hours a day. Well, the equation is complex at that point. Do we attribute it all to hourly rate for this $100 that we've hypothetically made? I think you can send yourself on... I don't think it's healthy to think about it like that, because there's always a way of thinking about your hourly rate as almost worthless as a creative. And that can stop you from being creative. It really can. And then you would think that we could think something like, okay, well, what can I do to bring the costs down? Can I exercise less? I don't think that's a very good idea. We may not live as long. We may become depressed, in fact. Okay. Do I sleep less? Obviously not. Do I drink less coffee because I spend so much time making coffee? No, my gosh, no. Why would you even say that? Do I spend less time with my family? Well, you could do that, but you know, that's part of the reason that possibly we become self-employed in the first place. It's certainly one of the greatest bonuses that I get. You could say, oh, what about if I spend less time making art? Okay, well, we're an artist, so why would I make less art? No, I think you should make more art, but you should spend less time on each piece. Whoa, doesn't it make it really throw away when I spend 10 minutes? What about if you sell this 10-minute painting for $100? Then you know, then now we're talking. Now it gets into the point where the best artist is the person that produces the most work. And you might say, oh, that can't be true. That can't be true. Well, the person that's finishing, because finishing art is a skill. Finishing music is a skill. The person that makes, you know, art in 10 minutes, that the whole procedure is about making the whole process of art so seamless that it just falls out of them. They produce more, they get better. Yes, you can spend 50 hours on a painting getting it really, really perfect. But is the point of art to get it perfect? Is the point of art to get it polished and everything in the right place? Listen to the Heartbreaker solo by Jimmy Page, Led Zeppelin. Listen to the solo on that. Okay, is that perfect? Would spending more time on that make it sound better? I just remember vividly this one artist telling me that they'd spent 500 hours painting, doing this painting, and everyone was very impressed with the amount of time they'd spent on it. I tell you what, there was no way that they were impressed with the painting because it was not good, almost objectively not good. The impressive thing was the amount of time spent, right? And that is an inherent problem with today's society, that we brag about how much time we spend on things. You know, recently I've been producing on an anonymous channel. There's no way you're going to find it, all right? I've been getting into the process, and I think that you should try this. You're gonna argue against it, but remember, people are full of excuses why they won't do this sort of thing, why they won't produce more work. Are you full of excuses? Well, let's see. Let's see if you want to make excuses. Your brain's telling you. I bet there's a little voice inside telling you why you shouldn't do this, all right? But I predicted it. I told you so. For the future. I've streamlined an Ableton session so I can bash out ambient bangers in about 10 minutes, all right? They last for about an hour because I'm very, very much into generative music. This kind of lends itself to it, all right? Not AI, not AI, which is important, but I've been uploading them to an anonymous channel, and in the past 2 weeks I've had 1,000 hours watch time for that without any advertisement or, you know, the point is that it's anonymous. I'm not using any views from this channel, certainly not to go over there. And I think that's a really great thing. And because I'm working in an efficient way, I'm learning to be efficient, but I'm also learning how to finish things. And I've never learned more about production than in the last 2 weeks. Okay? But it's strange that we live in a time where making music and making art is arguably the easiest it's ever been. Well, almost objectively the easiest, because we have things like Ableton and stuff like that. And we still have people telling us that if you create a lot, it just makes it more throwaway. All right? Well, the only thing that makes your art throwaway is if it's worthless to someone. You know? I think and there's no such thing as a Renaissance man anymore. I think most people have several different interests nowadays. And the fact that we can make anonymous TikTok pages or YouTube channels and put our very streamlined work onto there just to see whether people like it, and we can learn about how people respond to it, that's a good thing. Now, the argument that you might come up with is, well, yes, that it might be throwaway at that point. But you might say, well, so Chris, are you telling us to fill up YouTube with these throwaway things? Yes, because at the moment, social media is filled up with AI voices talking about animal facts that are like completely spurious. Okay, I love the word spurious. And I'd much rather it be filled up with the imperfect, throwaway art of someone that was just trying to get better. All right? We have a really strange relationship with time. We want to spend hours and hours on paintings, and then we want to fuss about and go crazy about working out how much we make and the ratio to that. So we'll spend 500 hours and brag about it for a painting, and then we'll cry about the ratio of how much we sell to. And that can't be healthy, can it? This is how I've been thinking for the last few years, and it's led to me to be rather prolific. And you see a lot of videos about how to succeed when you've got a lot of interests. People just want to congratulate themselves for having lots of interests. I think that it's just the fact that modern day life should allow us to have lots of interests that we can be successful with. When we make a lot of art, we sell a lot of art, you might think that it's a bad thing to make money from producing. Okay, I'm sure someone will be thinking that. But we don't make the art to make the money, we make the money to make more art. That's basically a Walt Disney quote, by the way, but about movies. Guys, if you want to support the channel, you can become a patron, or you can download some of or just simply stream my music from Bandcamp. I try to get as much up there as possible, but I don't want to make it throwaway, right? All right. Guys, thank you so much for coming. By the way, you may have noticed that there were no cuts in this video, and there was no B-roll footage. So if you got to this point, thank you very much for having an attention span. Let's change things for the better. Take it easy.